Howdy, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Rebuilding Real Life. I am Mike, and a couple of months ago, I sat down with some people in my life because I owed them an apology. I thought I knew what that conversation was going to be about, but really I didn't. I went into that conversation wanting to listen. I had an apology that I needed to make, and I felt ready to make it. Then they brought up something from almost a year earlier that I thought I had already faced. They told me that the way I acted on a family trip had ruined the entire week for them. And I want to be careful with the details here because I love the people involved, and some of the story belongs to them. I'm also not telling this so we can decide whether every part of the conversation was fair. What matters is that I learned my behavior had landed farther than I knew, and I wasn't prepared for what hearing that would bring up in me. So to understand why it caught me so completely off guard, I need to go back to what happened on that trip and what I believed I had already owned. So I had gone on this family trip, really emotionally raw, and looking back, I probably should have just stayed home. I got sick the morning that we were supposed to get ready to leave. My wife and I had both looked at that trip as a chance to spend time with family and let them see some of the work that we had been doing. So when I felt well enough to go back later, I wanted to force that good moment to still happen. I was excited to be around family, and I wanted the people I loved to see that I had been working hard and trying to change. I went with good intentions, but good intentions didn't make me ready. While I was there, I yelled at my wife in our room and other people could hear it. And it wasn't just a sharp comment or a little bit disrespectful. Like, I yelled and it was bad. I felt terrible almost immediately. And I apologized to my wife. Over time, thankfully, she was able to show me some grace. And I believed the two of us had faced what happened. And that trip actually became a much bigger turning point in my marriage than I understood while I was in the moment. So because of that, I had beaten myself up over it for a long time. I knew it was serious, but I still saw the main harm as something between me and my wife. And I knew other people had heard it. I knew that it had been uncomfortable, but what I didn't know was that they believed my behavior had put a dark cloud over their entire vacation. And I can understand why I was in that emotional state without pretending it made what I did okay. Both things are true. I came in to that trip with hope. I was not doing well, and I made a choice that hurt people. Understanding the conditions around a failure, I think, can help me keep it from happening again, but it can't turn that failure into something harmless. So I thought I understood the size of what I had done, but now I'm sitting in this conversation and it's showing me that there was an impact I had never really seen. The strange part is that the old failure came up in this conversation while I was trying to take responsibility for a newer one. And so the conversation happened because I had written an angry Facebook post a couple months earlier after a painful family situation that's different from the trip. And in this Facebook post, I didn't name anyone, but the people involved knew it was about them. And so by the time we sat down together, I knew the post was wrong and that it had hurt them. There were parts of how they understood my reasons that I didn't really agree with, but I really wasn't there to debate my intentions or to even correct their interpretation. I was just there to own what I had done. And I told them, look, the reasons why I made the post don't really matter. The point is that I hurt you. It was wrong of me to do, and I'm really sorry. I never should have posted it. That was the apology. that I was prepared to make. And I knew what I wanted to own, and I was able to do it without defending myself. Then the family trip came up, and I didn't know that they were still carrying it. And I definitely didn't know that they believed it had ruined their whole week. So I said I was sorry for yelling at my wife, but then I started explaining. I pointed out like I had apologized to her almost immediately, and I told them that I had already punished myself enough for that mistake. Then I tried to explain why shame is dangerous for me in addiction and recovery. And those things may have been true, but they weren't what the people sitting across from me actually needed first. They didn't tell me that this is how it landed, so I really don't want to put words in their mouth, but when I replay my own response, I can hear like how it may have sounded, kind of like, yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm done feeling bad about it, and now I need you to move on too. And I think looking back, what I wish I would have said is much simpler. It's something like, I should have just stayed home. I'm sorry I came on that trip in the emotional state that I was in. I'm sorry that you had to hear me yell at my wife, and I'm sorry that my behavior put a dark cloud over the entire week. There were other parts of this conversation where I really wanted to defend myself or correct something that was being understood. Most of the time, I held back because that wasn't why I was there. I went there to listen, understand, and then take accountability. And I really did do that to the best of my ability. But now I can also see that when the family trip came up, I didn't become defensive, but I did begin defending myself through explanations. I tried to protect myself from shame before I had fully made room for their hurt. I left knowing I had heard something important, but as soon as I reached my car, that one hard truth started turning into something much bigger. And so I'm in my car and my thoughts went everywhere. At first it was simple, like I didn't understand how much that hurt them. And then it became, they're always going to see me as that person. It kept growing from there. Like maybe they would never believe I had changed. Maybe I could do everything right, but still be defined by the worst things I had done. Maybe all this rebuilding isn't going to lead anywhere. And I never questioned whether I should stay sober. Going back to the way I used to cope wasn't really going to fix anything. And I knew that. But what I questioned was whether all the work would ever matter outside of me. I was changing, but would the people who knew the old version of me ever be able to see it? That was the part that really discouraged me. One real failure and one real impact had turned into a prediction about my entire future. The conversation was over, but now I was having another one in my own head where I was the defendant, the prosecutor, and the guy already writing the sentence. And I didn't need to decide my whole future in that car. I really just needed to get through that Friday without letting the one painful conversation tell me nothing has changed. And the way I got through it wasn't one giant breakthrough. It was just a bunch of ordinary things that I already knew how to do. So that day, recovery looked a lot less like feeling better and a lot more like returning to my routine. I went to 2 meetings that day. And it wasn't because I was trying to outrun the conversation or pretend that it didn't hurt. I just needed to get out of the courtroom in my head and back around people who helped me stay grounded. I didn't need both meetings to even be about me or to tell the whole story to everyone there. I just needed a familiar routine of showing up, listening, and just being around people who understood what it was like to have a hard day without turning it into a reason to give up. I needed to remember that my recovery was still real even when I felt discouraged. I sent my gratitude text, and one of the things I was grateful for was that I had gone into a hard conversation and listened and taken accountability without spending the entire time defending myself. And I wasn't saying that I handled every part perfectly. I was recognizing that there were several moments when I wanted to argue or correct something, and I chose not to. The old version of me would have needed to win, but that day I was really trying to understand. And I talked with my sponsor at the Friday night meeting, and he really helped me remember that people who are involved in this were hurt and they may need more time. And it's not my job to make them see me differently before they're ready. My job is to just keep doing the next right thing and stay focused on what I can control. I also talked with my wife, and she helped me hold two parts of the story at the same time. She could understand why they were hurt, but she could also understand why the conversation hurt me. And I needed both. I didn't need someone to tell me that I had done nothing wrong, and I didn't need someone to tell me that my feelings didn't matter. I needed help staying honest about their pain without pretending my own pain wasn't real. And I prayed, and I don't remember the exact words, but it was probably close to, God, show me your will for me and give me the power to carry that out. And I thanked him that I can listen now, and I can be accountable, and I can notice when I'm explaining instead of apologizing, and I can return later if there is more for me to repair. None of those things made the feeling disappear, though. And I didn't get to talk to my therapist until the next week. So there wasn't one perfect conversation where everything suddenly clicked and I felt amazing. I was discouraged the rest of the day. The difference was that I let myself be discouraged without feeding it or escaping it and turning it into a case against myself or against them. I went to bed with the situation unresolved, but I had made it through the day without abandoning myself or the work I had been doing. The next morning, I woke up and realized it was a new day. I sent my gratitude text again, and I came back to something recovery has taught me over and over. I only have today. Yesterday happened. I can't change it by replaying the conversation until I finally find a version where I say everything perfectly. I don't believe I had anything to be ashamed of for going into that room and having that conversation. My intention was to listen, understand, and take accountability. I held back when I wanted to defend myself, and I did the best I could with a conversation that surprised me. I can be proud of that and still admit that part of my apology probably could have been better. If I still owe somebody a clearer apology or an amends, I can do that when the time is right. That's different from waking up and sentencing myself again just to prove I care. Responsibility gives me something I can do. Shame just gives me a sentence with no end date. Feeling steadier didn't mean I woke up cheerful or suddenly believed the conversation had gone perfectly. It just meant yesterday no longer felt like an emergency that I had to solve before I could go live my life. And I don't know how these relationships will turn out. I just know that I can keep moving forward in my recovery today. I can pray, I can be honest, I can go to a meeting, talk to people who keep me grounded, and keep becoming someone who responds differently. And that is the kind of grace that I'm learning to receive. Not permission to ignore the past, but permission to face what is mine and still move forward. And this really makes me think about Peter in the Bible after he denied Jesus. Peter denies even knowing Jesus 3 times. There's a detail in the story that really stands out to me. In John chapter 18, Peter is standing near a charcoal fire when he denies Jesus. Then in John chapter 21, after the resurrection, Peter reaches the shore and Jesus has breakfast waiting beside another charcoal fire. The Bible doesn't tell us exactly what Peter thought in that moment when he saw the fire, but the parallel is hard for me to ignore because Jesus brought Peter back near a scene that could have felt very familiar, but he didn't use it to humiliate him. Jesus asked Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" Peter had denied him 3 times, and now 3 times he was given the chance to answer with love. Then Jesus gave him something to do. Feed my sheep. Take care of my people. Jesus didn't pretend that Peter's denial never happened. He brought Peter close to the memory of it. But he also didn't tell Peter that the only honest response was to stay miserable forever. Peter's failure still mattered, and Peter still had a life to live after it. I believe God can forgive me while there are still consequences, conversations, and repairs in front of me. Grace doesn't make what I did smaller. It means the worst thing I did doesn't get to become the end of my story. What comes next matters too. Peter wasn't asked to prove he was sorry by suffering forever. He was asked to love people and serve them. For me, that looks like hearing the truth, making the repair that is mine, and letting the way I live today become part of my response. So when an old failure comes back, I need one honest question that helps me figure out what comes next. So the question I've been practicing is this. I just ask myself, is there something I can honestly do about this now? So what I'd like you to do with me this week is practice that question. I want you to choose one memory that keeps coming back. Don't drag your entire past into the room. Just choose one moment and ask whether there is something you can honestly do about it now. Maybe you learned something new about the impact, or maybe your first apology included a defense, or maybe the same behavior is still happening. If there is something new to own, I want you to name one action. Something like listen without correcting, or make the apology more clear, or just talk with your sponsor or therapist or recovery friend before you act, or maybe change the behavior that is still causing harm. You don't have to solve the whole relationship. Just name the next honest thing that belongs to you. But if you've already told the truth, made the repair that is available, and changed how you live, then replaying the memory isn't making you more accountable. Do the next dependable thing instead. Send the gratitude text. Go to the meeting. Make the call. Pray. Take care of the people in front of you. Let the changed behavior say what additional suffering cannot. The proof that I'm sorry isn't how long I can suffer. What my family needs from me is not permanent misery. They need me to understand how I affected them, own what I did, repair what I can, and keep becoming someone who doesn't repeat the same behavior. The family conversation that I just talked about is not fully resolved, and I probably do owe them a more clear apology or an amends, and I want to be willing to make it. But beating myself up every day between now and then won't make that apology more honest. It will just keep turning my attention back toward me. An old failure can still require something from me today without proving that all the rebuilding I have done means nothing. So I can listen to what came back, and I can take responsibility for what I understand now, and I can ask God how He wants me to show up next. Then I can live this day instead of trying to rewrite yesterday. And that, to me, is part of rebuilding real life. Not perfect, just willing. Have a good one, y'all. I'll see you next week.